The light does not vanish all at once. It retreats in layers. It pulls back from the edges of the world until only a thin strip of amber remains on the horizon. For a few minutes the line between the sea and the sky is a sharp, glowing wire. Then that wire snaps. The gold fades into a bruised purple. This deepens further into a heavy, oceanic blue. This is the hour where the colours bleed together. The water loses its transparency. It becomes a mirror of the darkening air. Eventually the horizon disappears entirely. There is no longer a line to follow. There is only the vast indigo weight of the Atlantique. The temperature shifts with the light. The warmth of the afternoon sun leaves the deck. It is replaced by a damp, creeping chill. You can feel it first in the joints of your fingers and the bridge of your nose. A thin crust of salt has dried on your skin throughout the day. It feels tight, rough. As the humidity rises, that salt softens. It turns into a tacky film that clings to everything you touch. The air begins to smell of wet hemp and old tar. Listen to the deck. All day this space was defined by noise. There were the sharp shouts of officers. There was the rhythmic grunt of men hauling on lines. You heard the heavy thud of leather boots on weathered oak. Then the sudden violent snap of canvas catching a gust of wind. It was a place of friction and effort. But as the blue hour settles, the human noise begins to drift away. The shouting stops. The frantic energy of the day collapses into a measured, quiet routine. In this new silence the ship begins to speak. It is not a true silence, but a shift in frequency. You start to hear the vessel as a living thing. There is the long, low groan of a massive timber shifting under the pressure of a swell. There is the rhythmic creak of the masts, swaying in a slow arc against the sky. These sounds are constant. They are the heartbeat of the voyage. You hear the sigh of the wind as it filters through the rigging. It is a sound like distant breathing. Below your feet there is the steady, hollow slap of water against the hull. It is a cold sound, a patient sound. The ship does not fight the ocean. It settles into it. Every rope and every bolt is under tension. They hum with a vibration you feel in your chest more than you hear in your ears. The world has shrunk. The distant lands are gone. The daylight is gone. Now there is only the wooden platform beneath you and the dark water surrounding it. You stand at the railing. You feel the rough grain of the wood under your palm. The wind carries a spray of brine that tastes of iron and cold. The bustle of the day has ended. The night watch is beginning. Step on to the deck. The planks are scrubbed pine, weathered by salt and sun. Your boots make a dull, hollow sound as you move toward the rail. The air has changed. It is no longer the warm, heavy breath of the afternoon. Now it is sharp. It carries the scent of old brine and wet hemp. You lean your weight against the wood. It is cold. Below you the ocean has become a vast, moving weight. In the daylight the sea is a surface to be crossed. At night it becomes a presence. Everything that defined the day has dissolved. The shouting of orders, the hauling of lines, the heat of the sun on your neck, all gone. In its place is a different kind of order, a quiet order. The ship does not stop moving, but it changes its voice. The rigging sighs in the wind. The timbers groan in a slow, rhythmic pulse. It is the sound of a machine made of wood and breath. We will spend some time here. We will linger in the hours between the sunset and the first grey light of morning. This is an invitation to observe the rituals that kept a crew sane when the horizon vanished. We will look at the tools of the trade. We will see the small, polished brass instruments that caught the flicker of a single star, and the heavy wool coats, smelling of L.A. nolin and smoke, that warded off the atelier antique chill. We will consider the mental weight of the night watch. The way a man could stand for 4 hours in near total darkness and still feel the direction of the wind on his cheek. He did not need to see the land to know he was moving toward it. He only needed to trust the sequence. There is a specific kind of silence on a ship at night. It is not an absence of sound, but a presence of attention. Every creak tells a story. A sudden snap of canvas is a warning. The rhythmic slap of water against the bow is a heartbeat. To the crew these sounds were a language. They did not fight the dark. They learned to listen to it. We will follow the rhythm of the ship as it cuts through the black water. We will see how time was not measured by the ticking of a clock. Instead, it was marked by the slow fall of sand and the iron strike of a bell. We will move through the shadows of the forecastle and climb toward the lonely height of the lookouts VIH Gill. We will learn the rituals that turned a terrifying void into a nav-I eager bull path. The stars above are fixed and cold. The deck is steady beneath you. The wind remains constant, and the night is only beginning. The night is not a single block of time. It is divided. For the mariner, the day is a circle of 6 watches. Each watch lasts 4 hours. This is the rhythm of the ship. It dictates when a man sleeps and when he stands on the deck. It is a cycle of wakefulness and exhaustion that never truly ends. There is one exception to this rule. Between 4 and 8 in the evening the schedule shifts. These are the dog watches. Instead of one long block, the time is split into 2 shorter watches of 2 hours each. This was not for navigation. It was for the men. The shift allowed the crew to rotate their duties, so that every sailor could eventually find a moment for an evening meal. Time on a sailing vessel was not measured by a ticking hand or a swinging pendulum. Those were too fragile for the heave of the ocean. Instead, time was held in a glass. A 30-minute sandglass sat near the helm. It was a simple tool, a narrow waste of glass and a measured amount of fine sand. The responsibility of this glass fell to the quartermaster or a ship's boy. He watched the grains fall. When the top bulb was empty, he turned the glass over. He did this 8 times for every watch. The boy's fingers were often cold. The glass was smooth and heavy in his grip. Each turn of the sand was a silent heartbeat. It was the only way to know how much of the darkness remained. If the glass was forgotten, the rhythm of the ship collapsed. To announce this passage of time to the rest of the crew, there was the bell. The bell was more than a tool for signalling. Naval tradition regarded it as the soul of the vessel. It lived in the rigging, a heavy piece of cast metal that could cut through the roar of a gale. The bell did not strike once. It spoke in pairs. 2 strikes. A pause. Then 2 more. These pairs marked every half hour that had elapsed since the watch began. By the end of the 4 hours, 8 pairs had sounded across the water. The sound was clean. It was a constant. In the middle of a featureless ocean, the stars might be hidden by cloud, and the horizon vanished into black. There, the bell provided a fixed point. It told the sailor where he stood in the day. It reminded him that the watch would eventually end. The strikes echoed off the wooden hull and drifted over the swells. They were the only voice the ship had to tell its crew that time was moving forward. And as the final pair of bells rang out, the air grew heavy with a different kind of weight. The focus shifted from the clock to the compass. The compass rests in the binnacle, a housing of polished brass and coal glass. Inside, a needle trembles, searching for a pull it cannot see. For the sailor on the night watch, this small, OSIE-lating sliver of metal is everything. It is the only thing separating a planned journey from a drift into nothing. It does not show the land. It does not reveal the shore. It only points to a magnetic truth. When the clouds part, the navigator looks up. He searches for P, there, i.e. say, the North Star. While every other light in the sky rotates in a slow celestial wheel, this one point remains still. It is an anchor in the black. By measuring the angle between that star and the horizon, the mariner finds his latitude. He knows how far north he has travelled. This remains true even when the water beneath him looks exactly like the water he left behind 1,000 miles ago. This is navigation by faith in geometry. The world at night is an invisible map. There are no landmarks here, no hills to mark the distance, no forests to signal the turn. There is only the heading, the speed of the hull through the swell, and the steady ticking of the sandglass. This is dead reckoning. It is a calculation made in the mind, a line drawn across a void. The navigator must imagine the ship as a single point moving across a dark plain. He trusts that his math is more accurate than his intuition. The effort is not physical, but it is heavy. It is the strain of holding a course when the destination is hidden by the curve of the earth. The horizon is a hard edge, a limit to what the eye can perceive. Beyond that line the land does not exist yet. It is a promise kept by the compass, a coordinate written in a ledger. The ship moves forward, cutting through water that has the consistency of ink. The bow creates a low white hiss in the dark. Every few minutes the helmsman makes a microscopic correction to the wheel. A fraction of a degree here, a slight nudge there. If he drifts too far, the error compounds. The mistake of 1 degree over 100 miles is not a small thing. It is the difference between finding a harbour and hitting a reef. So they watch. They watch the needle. They watch the star. They hold a line with a discipline that borders on the religious. The ocean does not care about their destination, but the compass does. It remains indifferent and precise. The navigator leans over his charts, the paper yellowed and smelling of salt. He marks the position with a lead pencil, a small cross in a vast empty sea. He knows that for now they are exactly where they are supposed to be. The air on the night deck is not just cold, it is heavy. It carries a fine mist of salt that settles on the skin and clings to the coarse wool of a coat. You can taste it on your lips, a sharp metallic brine. It smells of old oil and wet hemp. Between the orders there is a silence that feels physical. It is a space filled only by the rhythmic groan of the hull, and the sudden sharp snap of canvas against the wind. These sounds do not break the quiet. They define it. The deck beneath your boots is slick with spray. Every movement is slow and deliberate. You move through a world reduced to what you can touch and what you can hear. The rough biting texture of a hemp rope, the freezing iron of a railing. Your fingers grow numb, losing the ability to feel the grain of the wood. The darkness is absolute. There is only the dim amber glow of a lantern, or the distant shivering light of a star. In this space the mind begins to narrow. The horizon disappears. There is only the ship and the water. Then comes the fatigue. It does not arrive all at once. It seeps in, like the dampness of the sea. It starts as a heaviness in the eyelids, then a slow drifting of the mind. This is the daze, a state where the boundary between waking and dreaming begins to blur. You are standing on your feet, but you are no longer entirely there. The world becomes a series of impressions, a voice calling out from the dark, a sudden shift in the wind. When exhaustion reaches its peak, the senses begin to fail. The din of the ship becomes a distant hum, the shouting of men, the crashing of waves against the bow, the ringing of the bell. It is possible to sleep while standing, to drift into a deep sudden unconsciousness even as the world screams around you. The mind simply shuts the door. You are awake enough to perform your task, but too tired to remember doing it. This is the weight of the watch. It is a quiet, crushing pressure that settles in the marrow of the bones. There is no room for longing or regret here. There is only the immediate need to stay upright, to keep the eyes open, to feel the salt air on your face and wait for the sandglass to be turned once more. The hours stretch, thinning out until time itself feels like a ghost. You lean into the wind, letting it push you back toward the centre of the deck. You watch the white foam churn in the wake, a pale ribbon cutting through the black. Your breath forms a small cloud in the air, then vanishes. The cold is no longer an enemy. It is simply the environment. It is the only thing that keeps you tethered to the present. You stand there, a small point of warmth in a cold, indifferent world. You are the eyes of the ship. Your world is reduced to a thin strip of black water and a deeper black sky. You scan, not with a frantic gaze, but with a slow, rhythmic sweep. You look for the ghost of a sail on the horizon, a jagged line that does not belong, or the sudden white froth of a shoal hiding just beneath the surface. These are the things that can end a voyage in an instant. Silence becomes a weight. It presses against your ears. Then comes the fog. It does not arrive all at once. It drifts. A grey veil that swallows the bow, then the masts, until the world shrinks to a few feet of wet wood. You can smell the dampness in the air. It tastes of salt and cold iron. The moisture clings to the wool of your coat. Sight becomes useless. The horizon vanishes. You are no longer looking for shapes. You are listening for echoes. When the mist thickens, the ship speaks. It is a forlorn sound. A fog-horn. One long blast. 4 seconds of low, vibrating air. Then 2 short blips, 1 second each. This is the signal. It is a warning to anyone else lost in the grey. It tells them you are here. It tells them not to move closer. Depending on the density of the air, the horn sounds every 4 minutes. Sometimes every 2 minutes. In the thickest blind spots it screams every 60 seconds. The sound is a physical force. It vibrates in your chest. It fills the lungs. It is a blunt instrument used to carve a path through the invisible. But after hours of this repetition, something happens. The mind begins to filter the noise. You become so tired that the din becomes a lullaby. You might even drift into sleep while the horn continues to wail. This is the paradox of the watch. The very sound meant to keep you alert becomes the thing that pulls you under. It is a dangerous kind of peace, to be surrounded by a noise so loud you can no longer hear it. You are calling out to a void, hoping for an answer that never comes, or perhaps hoping the silence remains unbroken. Your fingers are numb against the cold rail. The wind carries a chill that settles in the marrow of your bones. You shift your weight, feeling the slow roll of the deck beneath your boots. You stand there in the grey, waiting for the world to reappear. You wait for a break in the clouds. You wait for the first hint of light to touch the water. The air is heavy and still. The ship moves forward, blind and hopeful. The dark does not break all at once. It thins. First, the black becomes a deep indigo, then a bruised purple, until finally the horizon bleeds into a pale, muted grey. The sea mirrors this change. The water loses its ink and takes on the colour of wet slate. There is no sudden gold or brilliant red, only a slow, steady lifting of the veil. On deck the men are still. They have spent 4 hours staring into a void, their eyes searching for shapes that do not exist. The cold has settled into their joints. Salt has dried in white streaks across their wool coats. Their breath hangs in the air as small, ghost-like clouds that vanish as quickly as they appear. Their fingers are stiff, curled around the rough hemp of the rigging. Then comes the change of the watch. It is a ritual of necessity and silence. The new crew climbs from below, their boots thudding softly on the timber. They bring with them the smell of sleep and stale air. There is no fanfare here, no loud greeting, just a shared look between men who understand the weight of the night. One man speaks. His voice is low, raspy from the salt air. He tells the newcomer about the wind. He mentions the drift. He describes the state of the rigging and the position of the stars before they faded. It is a transfer of burden. The responsibility for the ship's safety passes from one pair of hands to another. For the men stepping down there is a sudden profound lightness, a release of tension they did not realize they were holding. They have kept the vessel safe through the dark. They have held the line. Now that weight belongs to someone else. They move toward the hatch, leaving the wind behind. Their movements are slow, heavy. They do not rush. They simply drift, pulled by a fatigue that feels like a physical pressure against their chests. Below deck, in the forecastle, the air is warmer. It is thick with the scent of old wood and damp cloth. Above them the world continues to brighten. The grey deepens into a soft silver. The outlines of the masts become sharp and black against the waking sky. The rigging, once invisible, now cuts clean lines across the horizon. The ship is no longer blind. It has found its way back into the visible world. The water begins to ripple with a different light. The deep oceanic blue returns, not as a threat, but as a map. The crew on deck settles into their rhythm, adjusting the sails to meet the morning breeze. There is a quiet confidence in these movements, a knowledge that they have survived another night of the invisible world. The sun has not yet risen, but the light is enough. It is enough to see the bow cutting through the swell. It is enough to know where they are going. The horizon begins to soften. First, the deep oceanic blue fades into a muted grey. Then comes a sliver of pale gold. It does not arrive with a flash. Instead, it is a slow leak of light that reveals the world in layers. The dew on the rigging glistens. The salt crust on the railings turns white. On deck the movement is quiet. A hand brushes against a cold hemp rope. Boots thud softly on weathered teak. There is no rush to meet the morning. The crew moves with a practised ease. Their rhythms are dictated by the ship and the wind. They have survived another night of invisible hazards. They have held the course. Beyond the rails the ocean remains an endless mirror. It is a vast indifferent space. Yet the vessel carves a steady path through it. The ship is a small point of order in a chaotic world. It carries its inhabitants forward. They are driven by a breeze they cannot see, but can feel in the lean of the mast. There is a profound security in this motion. To be moving is to be alive. The sounds of the morning begin to settle into a hum. The rhythmic slap of water against the hull becomes a heartbeat. The distant creak of the timber becomes a breath. The air carries the scent of pine tar and old brine. It is a smell that lingers in the wool of their blankets and the pores of their skin. Now let the deck fade. Let the physical weight of the ship drift away. The sails are full, but you no longer need to feel the wind. The compass is set, but you no longer need to watch the needle. The vessel continues its journey. It sails further into the light of a new day. It moves toward a destination that does not require your effort. The image of the ship remains, but it grows smaller. A white speck on a field of blue. Then a memory of motion. Then a flicker of gold on the water. You are no longer the lookout. You are no longer the navigator. You are simply a passenger in the stillness. The pressure of the day has not yet arrived. There is only the slow, steady pull of the current and the warmth of a fading light. The ship sails on in the mind's eye. It moves quietly. It moves surely. It carries everything it needs across the deep. The water is calm. The water is calm. The wind is low, the watch is over, And you can let go.